Hi, I'm Cheyenne Caraway,
And I'm Jed Smith.
and we are contractors at the Southern Ute Museum in Ignacio, Colorado. Today we're going to show you how to make and mount large text panels. Yeah.
So what we have here, we can kind of go over a list of the material we have and what it takes to produce and mount a larger text panel, such as what is in front of us. So right here, this was used for the Southern Ute Veterans exhibit, and you can notice there's a lot of different kind of components of this text panel here. You've got your text, you have a centered design, you have a large photograph. So when you are mounting an image or a piece like this, you're going to want everything kind of lined up and centered. And so with that, you're going to have to find out where your center is and try to put that to the mount board itself. Let's see here.
So we have as far as supplies go for this project, we have a clean cutting board, a ruler, a brayer, box cutter, pencil, Kimberly-Clark purple nitrile gloves. They are tactile and powder free, and they do the job for us. You have some tape, scissors, spring clamps, a large ruler, and then gator board for this instance. You can also use coroplast, foam board, obviously gator board, or mat board for this. It just depends on what you're trying to mount on. Knowing that coroplast does leave these lines going throughout, they will be visible underneath the print. Just keep that in mind. Okay.
One thing that we like about the gator board is it is relatively durable. It's great for traveling, exhibitions, as well as parts for your permanent gallery as well. It has a nice kind of hard front with the ease of cutting through the foam as well. It is not as hard to cut through as, say, coroplast. So that's the reason we use this a lot. And it's great for transportation. You can move a lot of text panels because they're relatively light if you use gator board.
And when cutting the gator board, it does leave a bit of a bite on the sides, which is why we have a piece of sandpaper here. We'll just gently go over the edges of the gator board once it's cut, and not in a rigorous motion, but just slightly going over it to clean off the edges for when the panel is mounted. Okay.
So like Cheyenne said, I'm just going to clean up this board here was already pre-cut. You can either use the box cutter and clamping down a ruler to cut your gator board to size, or if you have access to a wall cutter, that is also extremely useful. When cutting the gator board, you definitely want to have sharp blades, and again, change them out often. What happens with the gator board as the blade dulls, you will have some of the interior of it start to ball up, and that can cause issues with the cut, and it also makes the board not as stable. So I'm not trying to reshape the board or anything like that. Again, just taking off the rough edge of it left by the blade. And then it's always good to just kind of clean that up with a cloth or something, because it does leave a little bit of residue, and we don't want that on the board for when we mount our sticky vinyl to it.
Okay, we can get these out of the way.
So these larger text panels, if you have access to a plotter, that's what we used for this one. And when they're printed, you will have to cut them down to the appropriate size that you're wanting to mount the text panel onto the gator board there. So we have also, just to save a little time, cut this down to size. We actually have a 2-inch bleed, and then one of those inches is actually into the design. We want to have a nice clean wrap around our mounted board, so that way you're not worrying about lining it up right with the white border. And it just really creates a nice clean design for a final piece here.
Hold on. To get these gloves. Okay.
Alrighty, one other thing too, before you start mounting, if you are using a cutting board, you do want to clamp that to the table, because sometimes that will move depending on the surface of the table. So we usually like to use the same clamp to have that onto, attaching to the table. So, now that we've cut our piece to size, what we're going to do is we are making our marks to where we want our gator board, our pre-cut gator board here, to be centered on the image. And we have given ourselves a 2-inch bleed, so we're going to be going in 2 inches from side to side and from the top to get a nice level line, and that's where we will actually start to mount our vinyl to the board. So we want to make those marks.
All right. Okay, hold on. You said 2 inches.
Yeah.
This is 1 inch.
I thought this was 2 inches right here.
Yeah, but that's going to vary.
Well, we have our mark. We just, I thought it was 2 inches. I thought it was 2 inches.
It doesn't really matter, but
Yeah, it's 2 inches right
yeah, but I physically cut this. It could change.
there. Oh, that's okay. I think, yeah, it's 2 inches in, so from top and bottom.
Okay.
That's fine. So, just make the marks. We're just going to act like we're making them.
Okay.
One there, and then 2 inches here.
All right, so after these marks have been made, we will pull together as a team, pull the sides of the vinyl over onto itself from each side coming to the middle. That way we don't crease anything.
So we're removing the protective cover on the back of our sticky vinyl here, and we're going to go down about 5 to 6 inches or so,
Right.
and expose the adhesive layer. And one of the things that you want to kind of keep an eye on is this material, if it bends and sometimes it can crease, you will have that show up. So you want to try to reduce that as much as possible, and that's why working in pairs is helpful to that. So. So you
Okay.
can see there, we've pulled it down about 6 inches, and we're trying to stay kind of level with each other. And now what we're gonna do is bring this over top of it. And then maintaining contact with it, we don't want that to flip and become sticky on our actual image.
We'll slightly make a crease onto the backing. Okay.
And then we pull that up. And we can just show you a back view as well. So there it is with that crease. That allows us now, we have our marks on the front side of it, and we will be trying to line those two marks up to our gator board.
All right, so when applying the vinyl to the gator board, you're going to want to make sure that the gator board is coming off of the cutting board at least maybe 2 to 3 inches. That way you have room underneath to check where your marks are. And what we've done is clamped the gator board down with a spring clamp and a scrap piece of foam. And usually we do this because the spring clamps are so strong that they will leave a little bit of a mark on your board that you're mounting on, which can then be seen once it's mounted. So we would just want to reduce that error.
And with a lot of text panels or graphics, you will have your design, it will likely be darker than the gator board behind it. And even when it isn't, it is still hard to see the gator board through this vinyl. So that's why you're bringing it off of the table, the gator board off the table a little bit. So you can locate the mark that you made atop of your image here, and then put that mark to the corner of the gator board.
Right. So you'll just want to line up the mark that you made earlier with the corner of the gator board. And usually you'll start with one side and then go from there. And this is a little trick that we have. Sometimes when the vinyl is pretty transparent, but the image is still on it, you can still see the mark underneath with a flashlight. And sometimes that can help out too. I think that's right. And this can take a while, take your time with lining it up, just because it's so tedious. And you want to make sure that these marks are correct because they determine the way that the panel will be mounted.
Okay.
All right, so when you think you have those, don't press down too harshly from the vinyl to the gator board, just because we might have to shift some things around. And one way that we can double check that the measurements are correct is by going underneath or on top and slightly pull from that corner and make sure that your desired measurement is what that ruler tells you.
You want to make sure that the bleed on both sides is consistent. Yep.
Okay.
So once we have it where we want it, we're going to run our brayer lightly across the top just to get it attached and affixed to our gator board.
All right, so we'll rotate the gator board to match the length of the cutting board. Okay.
So now what Cheyenne is going to do is she's going to attach 2 clamps with the protective foam in between, and that helps keep the gator board in place. You will have to move these as you roll down the vinyl.
All right, so I'll give you that.
Okay. Alrighty, so now that we have our gator board with our vinyl attached to it, to the top, in place, it is clamped down to the table. We're going to start rolling the vinyl and peeling back the protective layer to affix it to the gator board. So if you're the person brayering, what you want to do is you want to work your way from center out and then just going nice and slow and steady, also overlapping your roll similar to mowing the lawn or something like that. So that way you make sure that you attach all the points to it.
And if you are the person holding the vinyl up and pulling at the same time, you're going to want to make sure that you have tension coming up top, not too much, but enough to where it keeps the vinyl from falling on itself and creasing.
The brayer should be the part that is actually making contact with the vinyl and attaching it to the gator board. So like Cheyenne said, she's keeping tension on the vinyl, and that allows me to lay down the vinyl to the gator board using the brayer, and this helps reduce again the possibility for bubbling or wrinkling that can occur.
All right, so we've hit our first clamp. So what will happen is I will stop pulling and Jed will place his hand onto the gator board so that it doesn't shift at all. And
then
he'll
I'm
pull.
just sliding down the clamp to make sure that it will stay in place. And still using both clamps at this point because we're about halfway there, but it's nice to have the security of these double clamps. And then we're going to start brayering again. Again, working center and working your way out, overlapping your brayer strokes. And sometimes if you do happen to have a bubble or a wrinkle in the material, depending on the material of the vinyl, you can possibly pull up and back a little bit to try to work the bubble out. So in that case, Cheyenne would pull this back up, peeling the vinyl off of the gator board slightly, and then I would come in with the brayer and try to work out that bubble. Again, working center outward. So now I'm going to remove one of the clamps completely, and you want to make sure that you get that other kind of protective foam part there. Sometimes when you're pulling it off and you're working with it all, you can sometimes miss that, and you don't want to have that underneath your vinyl. So now, because we're only using one clamp, I'm going to keep my hand firmly pressed against the vinyl and the gator board, just to make sure that that doesn't move while I'm rolling. And for larger text panels, you can use a larger size brayer as well. Just remember, we are going slow and steady with this. So now the final part, I'm going to keep my hand firmly against the vinyl and the gator board, and I am removing that second clamp. And I'm coming back in to finish up my rolling. Now you can clamp to the surface of the vinyl and the gator board, for example, up top in the corner here. But one issue that arises is your bleed. Depending on where you have it situated on the table, it can kind of bubble it or kind of push it up right there. So that's where we like to just have a nice firm grip on the vinyl and gator board for this last step, because you're only rolling out a couple of the last few inches here.
All right, so Jed will pick up the gator board with the vinyl attached. I will place the backing for it on top of the cutting board. It's just one more form of protection to keep the actual image from getting any kind of scratches. And he'll place it right on top.
Yep, like we said, this material can be kind of tricky. It does scratch pretty easily, so it is nice to use the backing as an additional protective layer. Now that we have it firmly attached to the rigid surface of the gator board. So you can kind of see there we have our measurement lined out, we have our 2-inch bleed, and we're going to start affixing that to the back of our board.
All right, so I will keep this centered and keep it from moving while Jed picks up the edges.
And so what I'm doing is I'm using my thumbs and 4 fingers there to try to just apply a bit of pressure to wrap the remaining vinyl around the back edge of our gator board here. And you notice I'm working from center out again, and that also just reduces the possibility of any bubbling on the back and also on the front of the image. And now that I have that attached, and I look and make sure that I have a nice crisp edge, and there's not really any area that seems to be out of place. Then I use my brayer and I lay down that vinyl just to make sure that it is affixed to our gator board.
And notice how we did not go all the way down on the corners yet. You want to make sure that if you fold this over first, to leave the edges untouched for now. And then we will pick this up and turn it over. We'll do the exact same step.
Hold it in place, and then I'm going to pull the vinyl, working from center out. Making sure that it's nice and nice straight edge to it. And then using my brayer. Okay. Alrighty, so now we have it attached here, and this is a point when you can actually look at your design and get an idea of where it is on the gator board. And sometimes there might be just a very subtle variation depending on the cut of your gator board. But this will allow you to see and make sure that your design is centered with the gator board. Okay, so now for the tops of the vinyl here, we're going to need to cut away a piece of material to create a nice corner that wraps around the back of the gator board. And so what you do is you're going to go slightly below the top of the gator board to make your first cut. And you're not going all the way to the edge of the gator board. So what I've done is I've made a small cut right there, and you can see that there is a bit of the gator board remaining on the corner here, and I've dropped down just a little bit to remove that part. And then the second part, you come in from the top, and you're going to match where the end of your first cut was, and then go at a slight angle inward to remove this piece right here. And so now that's going to allow me here to create a fold that I can drop this down onto. With your scrap piece, you want to throw that away, attach it to your leg there or something, that way that doesn't somehow get onto the front of your vinyl, ruining your text panel.
All right, so once that step is completed, you'll want to make sure that the vinyl is attached all the way to where you cut. And then you'll take those cut corners and slightly fold in, creating that crease right there. Okay, and so now we'll do the other side.
Again, fixing the adhesive layer to itself, creating a little bit of an angle, and then that will create a nice corner. And then we're going to do that for the other side as well. We're going to make our cuts and then do those corners.
Right.
Alrighty. So now there's just one step remaining to wrap this around the gator board. And what you do is you're just, because you've created that slight angle, that's going to give a nice clean edge and wrap around the corner, making it pretty much invisible when using this. So again, I'm working center out and adhering the vinyl to the gator board.
And by making those cuts earlier, that gets rid of the excess vinyl that could possibly spill over when you fold. And so whenever you do fold, you kind of want to make sure that you're just getting that clean corner. Don't be afraid to just kind of push it in.
And then we take our brayer and roll out the remainder there. And like Cheyenne said, because we cut away that material, that allows for more surface area to actually attach to the gator board. And then you rotate it and do that for your other side here. And then checking your corners, make sure that they are completely covered. And then braying down the surface. And so now you have a nice wrapped text panel that will sit off of the edge of your wall slightly there. These can also be put into cases. If you're doing that, you can affix a industrial grade Velcro. That way these are easily removable as well.
And if you are in a high humidity area or just need some extra adhesive, the tape that we showed earlier can be used to wrap around the edges of the vinyl to attach to the gator board for just that much more
Support,
attachment.
Yeah, so you can use some tape and actually just run it along this edge, and that will just be another way to make sure that this is secured to your gator board. But in most instances, that isn't something that you have to do. And
Yeah, that's how you make large text panels.
thank you.